Hello, I'm Heather Hager, Director of Media Services at Proof Advertising. It's an independent agency based here in Austin, Texas, and I'll let the panelists introduce themselves real quick.
I'm Gerardo Castillo. I am from CHATBOOKS. We are located in Salt Lake City.
I'm Michael Reynolds. I'm at AstraZeneca, headquarters in Cambridge, but U.S. headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware.
Albert Thompson. Is it on? Yes. Albert Thompson, Director of Digital and Innovation at Walton, Isaacson. Been at the agency about 14 years, and we are based in LA, Chicago, and Dallas, but in a remote world, what does that even mean today?
So we have a very diverse panel, so we're going to get a lot of interesting answers, I think, from these questions. So we'll start first. How do you approach video in your marketing efforts? Just kind of overall, what does your video ecosystem look like?
Sure. So I'm on the agency side. So just to level set a lot of people, a lot of the work we do is multicultural, which is kind of the basis of what we're going to get into tomorrow. But we have a wide mix between a bit of everything, between social video, what you would consider linear through our partners. It includes VOD, FEP. We do connected TV targeting as well. So I think when you look at going after diverse audiences, for us, we have to figure out where they are. So we have to play it in those spaces. So we have a pretty diversified mix and have had it for quite some time because we just don't have as many linear TV options when you talk about multicultural audiences. So ours runs the gamut. I think if there's anything where video is a thing, we probably tried it, even all the way down in the early days of just doing mobile display. So ours has a very varied mix, but it has a lot to do with how fragmented the attention is amongst the audience we're pursuing. So that's my soapbox as to what our strategy looks like.
I can go. Completely different. Sorry about that. Pharma company on the client side, but how we look at it, we believe media drives omnichannel, right? So, and we take a look at our media ecosystem or how we define it at AZ. It's more so inclusive, broadcast TV, digital, social, even print, but we look at it holistically in this space. So video essentially becomes an enabler for us, right? It becomes an important part of that customer experience. So if we look at how we approach that strategy, it's not a specific video strategy, but based on, the consumer journey, the patient pathway, where does video play in that, and how does we bring that customer experience to life? And myself and my team, we look at it more so on the brand by brand side, especially HCP versus patient. So it gives us a more cross therapeutic area view. So we leverage those different learnings across and try to find what the best strategic direction to push each brand.
Yeah, and first of all, at CHATBOOKS, video has been in our DNA since 2016 when we had a great video launch that actually tripled our revenue, and I'll talk about that in a different question. But right now our mix, we definitely much on all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, but each one of them we're approaching with very unique video ad units. It's not something that I can just be like, oh, what worked on Facebook is going to work on TikTok. We found that out very quickly a couple of years ago when we went into the TikTok reel. So knowing that, right now as we start dabbing into some of the linear TV or CTV, we're also starting to view that and realizing like, all right, what are we going to do to get some of the video ads there? What do they need to look like that are going to be different from what we're playing on all these social channels? So it's a lot of testing right now in that realm, and I'm looking forward to it here in 2022.
And so how has your video channel strategy changed over the past few years? The consumer shifts have changed a lot, so how has that impacted what you're doing?
I can start there. Essentially it's evolved with how consumers' expectation of the pharma space has evolved, right? So I always say it used to be okay to have shitty adverts, right? That's how pharma used to be. It used to be very someone running through the pastures, and then here comes the ISI talking about all the things that could go wrong if you take our drug, right? So that's where it used to be. But now, consumers have so much more control over their health and what they're prescribed. Doctors are now considering themselves influencers in a way, right? And they're looking for more educational content or content they can share or leverage themselves. So essentially, we've had to evolve with that trend. And what has it meant for us is, you know, bringing more capabilities in-house. And I don't mean us doing it ourselves, but more so having the right type of strategic partners and vendors to help us in this space as we continue to grow and mature. And then lastly, just in the delivery aspect of it itself, because it's so much more data-driven now, we've been more like creative conscious. We've been more based on like how efficient is our spend, what is, you know, how effective is it, and looking more in the numbers and the data part of it, and that's been a big growth and gap for us. So
I'm going to build off where he started. Well, look, my clients, you know, they're trying to sell product. They're not selling media. They don't sell TV shows. What I tell our partners all the time, they're not in the slate business. Our largest client, Lexus, they sell cars. We're looking for people who have intent to buy their vehicle in the highest intent. So we're looking at video based on decision-making models. When they break down what particular product they want to buy, what are they using to do so? Because there's certain media types they're just not. There's not an opportunity to sell something that costs $40,000. It's just clear. You know, it'd be different if we were selling packaged goods, and I'm sure for pharma, you know, you're talking about patient pathway. You got to get very intentional about where you should be showing up and how you present information. So that's where we started. So one thing we look at is sort of this notion of the attention stack. Where's the attention going from a viewership perspective? Because it's shifted, and there's huge differences between an older Gen Xer and a boomer, between millennials and Gen Z. It's not the same, not even from a discovery and information. So we map that against the model of what we are selling, and then that leads us into the media channels and vehicles we should essentially participate in, and it would scale. I think the biggest thing we're trying to decide is how to overinvest, not underinvest, based upon channel affinity. And then we have to look at what's bringing them downstream, you know, in a sense of what drives store visitation versus not, what drives lower funnel clicking versus not, what drives, as our clients say, those high valued actions that are measures of intent in conversion versus not. So there's a lot of things we have to look at and sort of break down to advise our clients how much we should be spending into beyond the growth of a sector. So if, you know, CTV is going through a huge boom, great. That doesn't mean we follow the same industry curve and start tripling, quadrupling the amount of budgets, because it may have less to do with how your consumer is making a decision to buy your product. So there's a lot of that what we put into it, which is why even sometimes when partners come, we're like, oh, this is great, but our client, we don't spend there because that's not how they sell. So we look at the value chain of video and how it moves a conversation for the brand, but we have to be very intentional about what moves mind share and then ultimately to at least a consideration stage of purchasing. And that's, I think, where a lot of it gets missed, because people are just spending against it, but not breaking down the sort of consumer model. And then we also look at the business model. You know, Lexus was a brand built through television, so we get it. But there are a lot of brands that don't need to be built through TV or through linear, or even as the same depth of video. So I think that's where a lot of the conversation needs to start in terms of how to use the media mix, because there's so much out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, for us, we have definitely done some major learnings from our first video ad in 2016 that I mentioned. We launched a video that was essentially 3.5 minutes long on Facebook. And yeah, I mean, everybody now, 3.5 minutes, but this video went viral for us. It's what carried us for like 1.5 years, just one ad unit that helped our company just grow tremendously. It was just amazing what the agency that we worked with did with that video. But now, I'm like, just 6-second videos. Now I'm like having interns that at times can do UGC style videos that outperform finding another agency to work on and giving us a 15 or 30-second video. So definitely a major shift in going from that super long form that we tried to make, you know, a sequel to. We had 2 sequels that we tried to do. If you guys haven't seen the video, look it up on YouTube. It's Real Mom. It's hilarious. I mean, it's a 3.5 minute just comic show. But yeah, we can't do that anymore. Like, I can't, nowhere in time can I put a 3-minute video on Facebook. Right now, it's everything about, you know, 10 seconds max. And how fast can I get this message out to get somebody to A, install our app, and then B, start this photo book product immediately.
So, Gerardo, you mentioned, looking at CTV, linear TV. So, especially in a D2C space, at what point do you think does there need to be a certain level of awareness for you to go to those channels, or kind of aligning more with where consumers are purchasing your product?
Yeah, so that is something that I've been testing linear and CTV throughout the years. And alongside of that, our company has been doing national brand awareness studies to just measure, hey, what is our aided and what's our unaided brand awareness? And I'm still one of the reasons I'm very excited to being here is hoping to meet a lot of people that may be able to answer this, because I'm at a point where it's like, all right, I keep doing these pulse checks, 2, 3 month, 4 month tests on these platforms, but all that ends up happening for me is my CACs go up through the roof. I'm not seeing all right, yeah, that CTV or that linear buy actually assisted all my other channels. And so my big question has been does CHATBOOKS just not have the brand awareness that it makes sense for us to be on that platform? Or is it our creative that's just not being direct enough to get people to take the action that we need? So if anybody has an answer to that, or has hey, yeah, you should be at a 40% aided or something, I would love to hear that, because I'm still trying to solve that, and it's something that I'm just going to keep testing year over year as we keep growing and we keep doing this awareness studies, and just figure out hey, what was my tipping point? And I'd love to hopefully someday have a case study about it if we figure it out.
I mean, same question, if anybody has that answer. I have 20 brands that you could work on. No, we look at, linear, connected TV. It's pharma's different space, man. There's so many views that you have to look at before we even focus in that regard, simply because, number one, you have to make sure the brand goal is brand awareness, but in our space, there's supply chain issues, right? So it's can we meet the supply and demand if we put something on linear TV? On our space, you have to worry about the competitive landscape. So we have brands that have head-to-head, fighting for mind share, and we also have brands that don't have and won't have a competitor for the next 3 years, right? That's how drugs work. It's the consumer segment and how we look at there, right? So we look at it from an HCP lens, a healthcare professional lens, but also from a patient lens. So once you put that on linear TV, everybody's seeing it. So then it gets to that communication hierarchy. So are we even telling the right story? Is this the right platform to tell this story if it's going to get watered down, if it has to appeal to both markets, right? So we have so many filters that run through as we try to strategize this, that what we have moved to is more so, as I mentioned before, is each brand going to market that makes explicit sense to them, right? And finding the right partner for them. So, but back to your first question, if someone can answer that, please set up time with me, so that'd be perfect.
In this world, how does your measurement in this modern era look for your video campaigns?
It's interesting. We first started working with doing CTV, and it was actually Trimmer when they were Yumi. The first thing I said is, let me know when CTV gets to parity of mobile display with the level of behavioral targeting, audience tracking, and we're basically there. So a lot of our CTV is targeting someone accessing via mobile device because we want engagement metrics. So I'm not a fan of running non-click anything. You have to get a barometer measure if it's working. If anything, you got to know if the creative is good or not, and you can't discern that just because viewer completion rates are high, because they should be 90% anyway. So VCR is not a success to me. A success to me is what action people took beyond lift, beyond click-through response rate. We started actually tying store visit tracking visitation to CTV to discern to what degree CTV versus social versus mobile display versus all the tactics drives people to a point of sale. You just need to know, because people spend a lot of money on over the top, everything that's CTV, FEP, VOD, linear, and they're not necessarily driving the business. They may drive awareness. As I used to tell our clients, they know who you are. And one of our other clients is NYPD. I'm like, everyone knows who the NYPD is, but not everybody wants to be a cop. So you have to find out who wants to be a cop in this era, post-BLM, who is non-white, because that's a lot of the recruitment strategy. And the only way you're going to figure it out is to run a battery of different things with different messaging to figure out what creates a pull effect to reach people who have interest and intent in reshaping the narrative around police officers, not only in New York as a DMA, but this country. And that's a big conversation, but that's a big ask when you start looking at it. But you have to understand how all the vehicles are willing to move beyond desire for someone to do something. So my advice is layer up all the measures possible. A lot of our CTV targeting is search enhanced, meaning we target people who have searched for our clients' brands or the category or their competitors, because search is still one of the greatest measures of intent. Location is the greatest because you can't fake, you don't fake where you go. You go there for real. You know, as I tell somebody, nobody fakes going in Target and they hate it and just walk out and go to Walmart. That's not a thing. So that's why you layer on store visitation, because no one fakes it. But you can click on stuff, talk about stuff on social media and never buy. But location data validates everything else. That's why they use it in movies. Well, your location validated all the other behaviors, so it's a match, it's a lock. So you have to have that sort of attitude around validating all the data signals that they are truly real as it pertains to the intent for your client's business, because they're trying to figure out if you're using the money smartly. Otherwise, they'll start taking the reins back and doing it themselves in-house. So these are all the things that I think clients are inquisitive about to what degree all these types move people to do something. So you should layer up all the tactics and wiring up with measurement to figure it out before clients make decisions for you, which usually means they're gonna take money back. So that's just kind of my thing about when you look at measurement, is measure as much as you can in many ways you can to learn. I always tell partners, media has to do more than deliver impressions. It's got to teach you something about the consumer. And I know Farmer, you're in a high stakes business where people are saying, yeah, but what are we learning? Like, we know we can spend money. We're drug companies. We have cash, but we need to understand where the sandbox we need to play in at what level.
I can just build off that because I think everything you said is correct. The most important thing you said was educate, and I always tell all my vendor partners is educate us, right? Because we will make the wrong decision, right? That's essentially why we hired you in the first place. But I think, no, it's like educate us so we can educate others. And I think that's the biggest point I'm trying to make here. As in pharma, it is extremely high stakes, but it's also extremely old school, right? And behind in this space. And sometimes we're pushing a boulder up the mountain. So my team, my media counterparts, et cetera, we're pushing a boulder up the mountain, trying to introduce these new channels and new ways of thinking and working for us. And the measurement piece of it is so important because data can't be argued, right? So the more the better, but also educate on us what you're measuring and why, and what does that mean, and then you'll have a partner for life. Because I think as I look at what my role is, it's to articulate the reasons why and then to continue to push us forward, right? And any help with that is always welcome, but also like I think you're spot on, like measure everything. The more you can provide us data-wise, I mean, the more we can provide you monetarily-wise, right? That's at least how I put it.
Yeah, and for us at CHATBOOKS, measurement, obviously highly important. Right now, one of like the ultimate like North Star measurements that we do is obviously just a post-purchase survey. We have like an 85% take rate on every first customer that walks in the door. So that's always a great pulse check when I'm doing like these CTV buys, or I'm working with Roku or Hulu, and you put that on there as a response, and hey, did you hear about us here? And so it allows me to do those quick pulse checks. In terms of the creative itself, since we do so much on social, we use what's called a thumb stop rate, which is just analyzing, how many people at least watched 3 seconds of this video ad relative to how many people I reached. And so that's something that we talk with every week with our creative team, where we're like, hey guys, here's some ads that we finally beat our baseline of 30% thumb stop rate, and we have 55%. What is it about this ad? What did we do different? What was the messaging at the very front? And how does that correlate ultimately down to your click-through rate? And then, most importantly, obviously, to customer acquisition at the end. But we have seen that anytime that we do get ads that have that great thumb stop rate, great click-through rate, it usually does correlate very nicely with lowering our CACs. So that is one that we talk about weekly.
Great. So we're almost at time. So I think to end it, we'll just see what do you think's next for video. Have you seen any innovations that you want to highlight?
Yeah, it's probably coming from a few perspectives. I mean, one, I think a lot of people are going to start to unpack the TikTok model. this notion of social commerce and commerce through video. I mean, it's like the old, home shopping network model, QVC. The ability which you can use sight, sound, and motion, i.e. video, and direct sell a product through the user session, through the experience. I think all the platforms are going to start to flirt with the possibility of that, because the rev share opportunities go up exponentially beyond just essentially running video. So I think the other thing is we have this war of the creators versus the media companies. So the evolution has been, from countries of power to companies of power to people of power. And we're just in that era where individuals as brands are becoming as powerful as institutions. So the creator universe, largely YouTubers and TikTokers, are essentially battling it out with major media companies that own and operate networks, because it's user attention they're fighting for. So do I want to watch my favorite TikToker, or do I want to watch NBC? Do I want to watch my favorite YouTuber, or do I want to watch something on MTV? I mean, that's just essentially where we're going now. So the video war is very much about that creator class versus the institutional class, and that's also a generational split between what millennials and Gen Z does versus what Gen Xers and boomers do. And the worlds are starting to converge, but it obviously hasn't necessarily sorted itself out yet. And I think, to my earlier comment about, let me know when CTV catches up with mobile display, all the measurements that this mobile display has had for years, over a decade, all the forms of targeting, behavioral, contextual retargeting, all that, is now all going to come to CTV, and the worlds are going to start to collide. So, you ever did a search on Google and got pinged on Instagram and Facebook a half an hour later related to the topic, but you didn't search for it on social? So we're going to start to see, we could see a world where, the walled gardens of search and social share it with the CTV OTT space, and you start seeing ads relative to what Alexa picked up because you were having a conversation in your home. Like, that's going to make things very interesting, as I'd say. So, I mean, those are kind of my 3 sort of premonitions of what I expect to see in 2022 and beyond.
I think something that I'm excited about is more interactive ads. It's something that we started to test a little bit into, but I think that has just a lot of capability in terms of actually being able to, like, not just hope that you get that 3-second, viewership, but you're actually getting them to engage with the video ad unit, whether it be answering a poll, a slider, whatever not, but something that gets them into that world and more aware of what they're actually doing there versus just passively viewing something.
Great. I think that's it.
Okay, good, it's on now. David Baker with GSD&M. Gerardo, this is more for you. You were talking about how your ads, and I'm very familiar with your original 3.5-minute spot. It's great. But how you're getting shorter and shorter. But in the meantime, on TikTok, they're getting longer and longer. They just expanded to 10-minute videos like 2 weeks ago. So do you think that it's more about the length and that thumb stopping in the first 3 seconds, or is it about the content?
TikTok, I definitely say it's very content driven. That's our whole TikTok strategy is completely different than what we do with the other social channels. It's very much very UGC looking video ads. I mean, we literally recruit a lot of our moms that work at our company, and we're like, hey, can you create some funny TikToks? Do you follow what the coolest trends are? And some of them, that's what they'll do. It's like they'll literally just see oh, what's the current trend right now, and how can I replicate it to mimic for our product? And we do that. And then we, generally try to keep them between 15 and 30 seconds, but it's definitely more about the content itself and how we're portraying it.
And I would just add that you have to look at the algorithm between Facebook, YouTube versus TikTok in their interpretation of what the user wants. So, and they're very different, which should necessitate what you create as a brand. And that's really more of a user-first centric. So, I mean, creative's got to be spot on, but the algorithm will kind of tell you how you got to play in that sandbox, because you actually can't treat the 2 domains equal, because they're not. And I think that has a lot to do with how brands are inbounding very differently to TikTok. And they'll tell you directly, the folks at TikTok, I mean, they're very smart about what works. Whereas, in YouTube and Facebook proper, look, it's more of a traditional advertising model. You look at something, the next thing you see is something just related to that something as a build, where TikTok seems to know what's in your heart?
Hi, Alexis from Simplify. Great, I took wonderful notes. I really appreciate everything that all of you have said, but I'm very curious. As far as CTV, who do you buy this from? Is it usually an MVPD? Is it a DSP? Or is it direct to publisher? I'd like to hear from each of you.
I'm currently working with Mountain, formerly Steelhouse, and so that's how I've been doing my media buys. I've just had a long-term relationship with them, so it just makes it easy for me to be like, here's what I want my targeting to be, and I'm kind of I love doing it myself, so I love that the platform is pretty much like I get to do all the targeting, upload all the videos, and I just rely on their team more for like helping me with the reporting aspect of things.
I can't necessarily share the exacts, but most of our brands are leveraging DSPs.
For us, it's a mix. I mean, I said it before, Trimmer was probably our longest journey partner. I consider myself a certified performance snob, so the reason we work with them so long is because of the return we've gotten since the beginning. We also work with another company, Captify, because they were the first one that really came with search-enhanced CTV. They started as a search-enhanced targeting company. They added CTV to the stack. And look, clients' eyes lit up and they're like, well, CTV has 200 million household penetration. That's a lot. And it's like, but we only sell X amount of units. So they want to refine audience. So that was the other one. The other one are a lot of our multicultural partners. But the thing that's interesting is we hold all of them to the same standard. We have them all do some of the similar things, the search enhance, the store visitation tracking. I mean, we almost look at which each one of them does well and then put that formula to the next one. And my advice to anyone is, like, don't just settle for what they say they can do. Say, well, this company can do search enhance. Can you do that? And look, a lot of the stuff you can bolt on. It's an additional CPM. I get that's not always popular. But at the end of the day, you got to remember, clients are in the business of, they're not in the media business. They just want to sell more product because their CMO is demanding more product be sold. So we make it very clear what the expectations are. And then we just make them match the caliber because we understand that tech stacks can be configured. So a lot of it is just if they're very flexible and adaptable, they'll get you there regardless of who you sort of work with. You just have to be less compromising about it.
Well, that was great, guys. If there's any more question for them, get to them around the round table or afterwards, but we want to move along here. So Heather, thank you, Gerardo, Michael, and